What's it like traveling solo as a woman and also adding the cultural element? What's the experience of traveling while Chinese?
I think I was like out of Prague for a day trip, and there was just this random guy that like started talking to me and was like, can I just ask? Cause I used to work in hotels, and like, why are Chinese tourists so dirty, so rude that like, you know, that like, this is like how you approach someone that you don't know. And also like, why am I speaking for like an entire nation of 1.3 billion people? And
not your job.
And also like the annoying thing is because like you're alone, like you have to be polite. So traveling as an Asian woman alone, that's like the next level of being alert, because not that I have to, you know, be careful of my own safety as a woman. I have to also, you know, program for a random unwanted comment about my race or my culture, because I'm very outwardly, you know, Asian, and that's what everyone can spot like immediately when they see me. And some people choose to other me in this way, and I'm not in control of any of that. So yeah.
Hello and welcome to another lovely episode of Eastern Hunnies. Today we have a very special guest in the room with us, the one and only Venus Wong, who is also an original OG Eastern Hunnie, born from our WhatsApp chat. To kick this off, we're going to introduce Venus on the pod with a professional bio.
Meet Venus Wong, everybody, a travel and food writer, editor and content creator from Macau, China. Currently working as a senior writer at Refinery 29 in London. Venus's writing has been published in Glamour, The Telegraph, Afar, and more. She has interviewed iconic figures such as Olivia Rodrigo and Courtney Cox. Having worked as a journalist in New York, Hong Kong, and London, Venus has a lived experience of adapting to different cultures. She's always on the lookout for new bubble tea places to review for her TikTok, and can spot inauthentic Asian food from a mile away. She is also a dear friend of the podcast, one of the most cultured and intelligent humans we know, and is one of our OG Eastern Hunnies. Venus Wong, welcome to Eastern Hunnies.
Thank you. What an intro. That should be on my gravestone. That will be.
So now we've done the professional bio intro, can you introduce yourself in your own words?
So my name's Venus Wong. My Chinese name is actually Wang Yisun. And I am a writer, editor, and content creator from Macau. My main job right now is senior writer at Refinery 29. I cover a lot of beauty, travel, and lifestyle topics for the website. And I also freelance like for travel publications like The Telegraph, Afar, Travel and Leisure. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here as an OG Eastern Hunnie. Yeah.
I think because we're friends with you, there's so much that we can sit and chat about and unpack from, you know, like your background, your heritage, your job, your travels, your just like cultural mindset.
Before we start, actually, should we just like share with our esteemed audience and guests about like where the origin story of Eastern Hunnies? Yeah, and so how we met Venus too.
Yeah.
I wonder if we each will have like a different account of how this came to be. So from what I remember, I moved to London from Hong Kong in 2017. And first couple months, it was hard to like build up a social life. And I was really struggling to make friends. But I got a DM on Instagram from this content creator, Debbie, that Mel and I both follow and are internet friends with, and she is based in New York City. And basically she was like, I'm passing through London. I'm organizing this last minute dinner meetup. Would you like to come? I'm going to invite you and a few of friends that I have from Instagram. So I went to that dinner, and it was fate that I met Melissa, and we had such a lovely time chatting together. And yeah, we kind of just gradually started hanging out more. And I think I was online dating at the time, and everyone knows that online dating is a cesspool. And yeah, the trenches, literally. And I remember getting some like crazy, weird, creepy DM about like me being an Asian girl, something like that. And I shared a screenshot with Mel and was like, check this out. This is crazy. And she was like, oh my God, I need to add you to this group chat of a few other like British Asian girls that I know. And that's kind of how it came to be. I got added to this group chat, and then we like renamed it to Eastern Hunnies just because, you know, term of endearment. And I feel like we're all really proud of our Asian heritage. And yeah, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to hold on to these people forever. Like, and that's my approach to friendship. So I was like, I'm going to initiate like hanging out. Let's go for dinners. Come to my house. I'll cook for you. And yeah, very solid multi-year friendship was born.
Almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Also, I love hearing your account because I feel like I forgot half of that backstory.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the beginning of the story for you?
I forgot. I remember now. You got that creepy ass like online dating DM, and I was like, I must share with the honey.
Yeah, like share with the group.
Yeah,
share with the class.
And then it became just like microaggressions from men.
And and I feel like we would share, you know, stuff that happened to us if. You know, we feel like we experience microaggressions in the workplace or someone was like rude to us in like a public platform. And it's really nice to have a space like the group chat to kind of commiserate over stuff like that. And it's also really helpful because sometimes in my writing, I cover a lot about like Asian identity. And it was so helpful to have friends in a group chat that I can sound off with.
We were saying there's just such a lack of those spaces to be seen and be yourself and not have to repress or self-edit and diminish. So I guess since you touched on it, professionally speaking, I know as a mate, you've been not just like at hyper British institutional media outfits, but also like in corporate workplace. And so can you just touch on how it feels to be an Asian woman in these spaces and the joyful parts of that, and also the parts where there could be more service to the underrepresented?
So a little bit of background. I've always had professional experience as a journalist, writer, working in media. Yeah, I worked at The Telegraph as a travel editor for 2 years. And then I decided to leave media to pursue like a more corporate career. So I then moved on to financial services, and I worked at a credit card company for 2 years in marketing. And that was like a really interesting, different experience because as a writer, you're really encouraged to channel your own perspective and, you know, what's on your radar. Whereas in a corporate environment, it's very much about like, you know, you can bring your professional self to work and everyone is chit-chatting, but it's a lot of like small talks that are really confined to like very British topics. So I remember, you know, if you're talking to like a senior director who a lot of the times is a white man, you know, the only topics that like would come up in conversation would be football, cricket, their pets, the weather. So
Guinness?
Yeah, maybe, going to the pub, which like, it's not really in line with like my personal interests and my background.
But that in itself is excluding.
Yeah, it's very like, you have to adapt. Yeah, you have to adapt to like what the going topics are in a team, especially when you're one of the very few people of color on a team. But the funny thing is there's been a reckoning about racial inequality in 2020. And since then, a lot of companies are trying to position themselves as a very inclusive, welcoming workplace. And you hear a lot about like, everyone should feel proud to bring their full selves to work. But, you know, it's not really like my lived experience. And also, I feel like as an Asian woman, I don't want to bring my full self to work. Like, I want to protect myself and I just want to get my job done and leave. But I feel like, you know, there's so much hypocrisy around like how these companies are like claiming to be really inclusive. And, you know, they have DEI activities for employees. But when you look at like the actual makeup of the teams, like who's at the top, who are holding senior positions, it's still not very diverse.
Speaking on the adaptability that you mentioned, so we know you've lived here, there, and everywhere, working at Vogue, Tatler.
I mean, interning at Vogue. Yeah.
Still
I can write a novel about that. Yeah.
So how do you think your exposure to all these different cultures and communities kind of has shaped your adaptability? Or like, do you feel like there's a community that feels like you in the UK?
Okay, so I'm going to break this answer down to two parts. I'm going to talk about the adaptability. So a little bit about my racial background. I am East Asian. My parents are both Chinese. They actually still reside in Macau, China. I've taken a lot about like my upbringing and my cultural background as a superpower of sorts, because my parents came from really humble backgrounds. My dad really came from nothing, and he's always been very adaptable. And he's gone from like not being able to get a secondary school education when he was growing up in China to having 2 master's degrees. And he's now a teacher, and he, you know, makes a really good living for himself in China as like an adjunct professor and a teacher. And always seeing that, like, that's always inspired me. And just one generation ago, like, my dad wasn't even able to finish his secondary education because of like political unrest. So, you know, when I think about that, I'm always like, oh, I have like a jolt of like raw energy from my ancestors, like flowing through my veins. Yeah, exactly. Like hardcore. My personal advice for life and career is I prefer, you know, roughing it and suffering in the beginning. And I, you know, like I said, like I was really working hard and in not very great circumstances when I was going to university in New York. But because I was so young, I just like wanted to be someone. I wanted to get somewhere. I had like a CV when I was 18 without like any work experiences. And I was trying to grow my network from day one. And I feel like now, 10 years later, I'm reaping the benefits of all the seeds that I've sown.
The immigrant hustle is so real and instilled in us as these like first/second generation immigrants to this country and to these big cities. A question for me is that I used to get a lot of my self-worth through my achievements. And I kind of like, yeah, I was just like, those achievements define me as a creative, as an artist, and as a person. Is that something that resonates with you also? Or is that you're like, no, my career is my career, my personal is personal, and they don't?
That's a great question. I think I've only learned to separate the two after turning 30. And I also think it was really helpful for me to leave a career that I was really passionate about, aka writing and working in the media, you know, having like a more traditional, stable corporate career, and then realizing that that wasn't a good fit for me. And also I'm still getting lots of opportunities to go back to writing, which is doing what I love and making good money from it. I feel like that has told me that like, I'm not just so-and-so who works at this magazine or this website. I can choose to leave and then come back. And, you know, I'm me because of my perspective, is not because of my Instagram following or the company that I work with. Although I definitely feel like it's taken age for me to get there. I feel like since turning 30, I have cared a lot less about just a lot of stuff that really does matter at the end of the day. And also, you know, going through the COVID pandemic and having a family thousands of miles away and not being able to.
I remember. You couldn't see them.
So I couldn't see them for 3 years. Yeah. And that just taught me like, that's so important. Like I care the most about the health of my family. Like nothing else is actually that important. And as long as I'm healthy, my family's healthy, and we are spending quality time together, like everything else will work themselves out.
You just celebrated your 1 year wedding anniversary with her amazing husband, Jojo, friend of the podcast, ally to the underrepresented. At your wedding, did a whole speech to you in Cantonese.
My first language, yeah.
He's constantly, I had the privilege of traveling with you and Joe around Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. What a crazy month. You can see how much effort he's put into honoring you, your family, your culture, your mother tongue. And he's been so responsible and self-accountable for educating himself. What is your experience of being married to a white man, and specifically an English man? Like the good, the bad, the things you have to work through as a couple.
I mean, like you said, he's a very self-aware, intuitive and
kind.
Yeah, kind. He has high emotional EQ to be able to deal with me at home. He's really good at listening. Like he's a very active listener, and that has really helped us since day one. I think he would agree that I'm someone that has really high standards for myself, and I set the bar really high for people around me, especially like someone like a life partner. Like I would need someone that really gets me fully for it to work. So in the beginning, like I remember when we first started dating, I was working on a personal essay for Glamour magazine, and I was telling him about it on one of our dates, and I was like, oh, I'm writing this about, Chinese cultural dressing and how, there's some teenagers in America that don't have, Chinese heritage trying to wear qipao, for their prom, because you guys were quoted in it. He was like, oh, and he didn't ask me any follow-up questions. And I immediately clocked him during the date. And I was like, why aren't you asking me about more about this?
Give me self-care.
Yeah, this is a huge accomplishment. I asked you questions about your life. You should be asking me. It's a really big deal. And then he immediately, I think his thing is when you point out something to him, he immediately adapts, and he does listen. Yeah, he listens. He does better, and he's a very thoughtful person. Yeah, it honestly hasn't been any heavy lifting on my part, and I think for him, the end of the day, some of my friends have asked him that as well, and he just says Venus is really important to me, and I want to do right by her. It's culture is important to her. Family is important to her. So obviously I need to learn, I should try to learn her language to understand her a little bit better. And I want to try as much of the food from her culture as possible, but it's never done from a cute, a weird fetishy lens. It's purely because these things matter to me.
Yeah,
so
a place of love.
Yeah, and he wants to take a really active part in it. And I think I remember saying something to him during our second date that was if you don't like dim sum, it's over. So I'm always it's not just I guess how he would react to having a partner who is Chinese, but also our life goals, our outlook on, our family and, gender equality.
What has your experience been like of integrating with Joe's family? How has marrying into an English family affected your own cultural identity?
I'm really lucky in a sense that Joe's family is absolutely the most welcoming and kind people. And they really take Joe's lead in terms of they understand how important certain things from my culture are important to me. And they will make the effort to show me how important it is to them as well. So as an example, I made a TikTok 2 years ago of my now mother-in-law, then my boyfriend's mom. She decorated her house for Lunar New Year in lots of red lanterns and kind of good luck trinkets. And I think she ordered a lot of them online and went to Chinatown. And it was just such an effort that I feel really appreciated. And, I think I mentioned to Joe maybe early days in our dating that Lunar New Year is as important to me as your Christmas. So, and I feel like they really took that to heart and took it to the next level. Like I really was not expecting like a fully decked out Lunar New Year living room, and
she was dressed like a dragon.
No, she was wearing red. She was wearing red, but that would be so funny. Yeah, and that TikTok went viral because people are like, oh, my mother-in-law, you know, some people who are in like interracial relationships are like, that's really special. That's really rare. Like, you know, bless them for taking your culture to heart. And I think that's definitely like a big reassurance for me because, you know, I do live thousands of miles away from home and I don't have that many blood relatives here, but knowing a family is like so welcoming to me and they take my culture so seriously and they're so willing to like learn more, which I don't even think is like that English to begin with. You know, that's really special to me. And I feel like in terms of navigating like our cultural differences, I just rely on my husband as the bridge. There's so much information about mother-in-law, daughter-in-law conflicts that I'm very aware that like, you know, this is like an issue for a lot of family dynamics, not just, you know, different cultures. So I think it's my spouse's responsibility to be the bridge of communication. So, and I feel like that's helped a lot because like now he knows, you know, what, if there's anything that they need to accommodate me for, or, you know, they need to, if my family's visiting, like if there's anything they need to know and they, you know, see my family and stuff like that. So I feel like it's really up to like your partner who is, you know, the communication between you and the family that, marrying into.
It's interesting because I read a book about kind of like marriage. I think it was like 7 secrets or 7 lessons for a successful marriage / long-term relationship. Now they have like it's called like the Marriage Institution. So if there's anyone listening who needs help with like long-term relationships, then I would recommend that resource. And what I learned from it is that when you enter a long-term relationship, the bridge is your partner. It's like the partner to the family. And also your partner should theoretically come before your family. And so like your needs as partners come before the familial needs.
But even when you have children, I think, you have to put your partner first.
Well, you have your own family dynamic. The only thing that I have some thoughts or some, you know, like opinions about is that this is obviously, it's written, I know, by a white man. And it comes from a very like Western individualistic perspective. Whereas like Filipinos and Southeast Asian people, you know, we come from a collectivist society. So it's just like the community comes first. Our family unit comes first. So it's just like, it's very like nuanced. It's very nuanced. And it's like multicultural. And I am not aware of there being further reading about this kind of like dynamic, you know, like family comes so first in our cultures. And I recognize that a lot within like self-improvement spaces and like self-help books and stuff. Like it's always, it's somewhat from, there's amazing Filipino outlets there that I like engage with, but the majority are from like a Western perspective. And that's something I really would love to explore and unpack.
That's super true because I feel like also in a lot of immigrant or non-white backgrounds and cultures, there's a kind of responsibility on the eldest or the only to lead the family or provide financially. I have Nigerian friends, Ghanaian friends who carry that financial responsibility for the family. And in some cases, when they are dating or exploring relationships, there has been friction and conflict because they cannot put that relationship first because of the responsibility. So that's a really real point, actually.
As a TikTok girly, you feature Joe like a couple times in your videos. And, you know, I've had, like you shared with me, that people have mentioned some comments, thoughts and feelings around that.
Yeah, so I was posting more on TikTok I would say like maybe a year to 2 years ago. And some of my content was just related to like nice things that Joe has done for me, or nice things that his mom has done for me. So like, when I mentioned that she decorated her house for Lunar New Year, and then, majority of the comments are super sweet and, they love seeing stuff like this. And there would be like a few troll comments that are like, oh, of course you're with a white guy, or, oh, you're a white worshiper. God. And yeah, it's honestly super hateful. And I mean, TikTok like filters a lot of that sometimes, but then like you can still see some of them. There's a lot of like feelings around Asian women that are partnered with white men. For some reason, like that does seem to be like a very common pairing. But I do feel like interracial dating is a really, increasingly common thing. I didn't look out to date a white guy, or, I didn't love Joe because he's white. And I know that like he didn't specifically seek out for an Asian girl. In fact, I think I'm the first Asian woman that he's dated. Knowing like what our situation is, like I don't feel that uncomfortable about it. I also know that I find tons of people attractive who are not just white men. So it's definitely like not what these comments are saying. I think it just so happens that I am dating and married to a white man, and what some people may feel a certain type of way about that because I'm an Asian woman and he's white. But I feel like the world goes on. There's something different happening every day, and in the future I don't want my kid to feel like, oh, my white dad and my Asian mom. Like I see a lot of the TikTok comments about that as well. Like if we have any future children, I want our future children to be proud of both sides of their culture, but also don't feel superior or inferior about, who they are, which I know it can be quite difficult to accomplish the identity side of it.
I will say I was in Popham's Cafe in Hackney on the weekend with my partner, and we counted genuinely 9 Waysian couples, exclusively white man and Asian woman.
Yeah.
And we were like, dang, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's very intricate. And, I feel like I am just like one part of the demographic. Like I can't really speak for, why white men date a certain group of people more, or if, a certain demographic is like, they're less like approached, in the dating market. But, I happen to be in love with a man who is a white British man. And I've been in love with Asian men before. I've dated different kinds of, people from different kinds of racial backgrounds. So like, I sit comfortable knowing that like, I'm good.
You do you.
Yeah.
This is just like recalled, like Viber, like WhatsApp, but used by the aunties. And my auntie commented in the chat, poor white man will always trump native Filipino man. And that was a hot take on how even if there's like a random guy who's nothing special, who happens to be from the West, when they come to the Philippines, for example, they are just like worshipped more, regardless, just because of their closeness to whiteness, their proximity to whiteness, to, I don't know, perceived wealth, whatever. And there's always going to be a favoritism towards that. But she's coming from a boomer perspective. And yeah, that phrase just sticks with me sometimes, and it's kind of a bummer. But I think just a phrase like that is so loaded and says so much about the mentality sometimes and the perceptions of Western men, or the streets being paved with gold over here, which is so not the case.
Yeah, and there's a stereotype with, white men that specifically like move to Asia to seek out, younger girls, or, date around. And, some of them even become dating YouTubers, and they talk about like, oh, it's so easy to like chat up an Asian girl. Yeah, like passport bros. Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like that's different from dating here as an Asian woman.
So this is actually something we were exploring when we decided to name our podcast Eastern Hunnies. because I had a conversation with my brother and he was like, Google Eastern Hunnies and see what comes up. And then I was like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that.
But honeys as in HONEYS, not our HUNNIES.
To clarify.
But we need to reclaim the narrative.
Yes, exactly.
This is why.
That's what we landed on.
Cleansing the search results.
Yeah. But when you Google it, don't Google it.
Trenches, do not Google us. But also, like, I think it is so important to reclaim that space for ourselves. I remember naming our WhatsApp group because it was fun and also off, like, not that deep, it was off the cuff, whatever. So why not be joyous and celebrate and fucking poke fun? Like, you know, you're gonna paint us in a certain light. Well, we're gonna reclaim it and then do our own, like, cute spin on it.
Because you are a travel darling, so we would love to just ask you to share about your experience of not just working in travel, but actually exploring the world solo. Because I know that you love to not just like eat out in London, try new places. You're just like an independent woman. So yeah, what's it like traveling solo as a woman? And also adding the cultural element, what's the experience of traveling while Chinese?
Yeah, so the last time I traveled solo was when I turned 30. I went to Bangkok for a week by myself. I mean, it was really fun. It was probably like one of the favorite trips I've taken in recent memory. I love being able to like call the shots if I want to go home early, if I want to, you know, just tag on a little food spot that I find on Google Maps, and you know, I could just do that. Like I'm completely in control of my own schedule. I don't know if you guys have heard, like there's been a lot of crypto scams, and there's this term called like the pig slaughtering scheme. Okay. And it's basically like a lot of people have been scammed by random accounts that would DM them or message them on WhatsApp and be like, oh, hey, sorry, I got the wrong number. And then would start chatting them up. And, you know, it's like a romance scam, and they would get the victim to invest in like some bogus scheme or stock, you know, app or whatever, and they'll take the money. And it's been said that like a lot of these people, they are based in, I think, Myanmar, and a few of the scammers are actually victims themselves, and they were unfortunately like trafficked from places like Thailand over the border to Myanmar, and then they're forced to like scam other people to try to be able to get out of it. So that was when like all that was happening. And this was like in Asian media a lot. And my mom was really worried that I'm just traveling alone and I could easily, you know, get on someone's car and they could like take me somewhere that, you know, no one can figure out where I am. But I feel like, you know, I'm just extra careful when I'm traveling alone, and I keep a few people like aware of where my whereabouts every day. And some of my friends from China, they knew that I was going to Bangkok, and they would just like check in every day and be like, are you in Myanmar or you're still in Bangkok? And I'm like, no, still good. Like I'm just, I remember like waiting for the bus in like Czechia and
not the bus in Czechia.
Because I think I was like out of Prague for a day trip, and there was just this random guy that like started talking to me and was like, can I just ask? Because I used to work in hotels, and like, why are Chinese tourists so dirty? They would just like leave their poop or whatever on the carpet and whatnot. And it's so rude that like, you know, that like this is like how you approach someone that you don't know. And also like, why am I speaking for like an entire nation of 1.3 billion people? And
like a job. And
also like the annoying thing is because like you're alone, like you have to be polite, because I just don't want like an altercation. I just don't want any aggression. Like I just want to like leave a situation quickly. So that's what like always I have, you know, in the back of my mind. And I've even been followed when I'm just like walking home in London, and, you know, and I feel like there's a lot more attention to stuff like this now, you know, after unfortunately what happened to Sarah Everhard. You know, I feel like now more men get it. Yeah. So traveling as an Asian woman alone, that's like the next level of being alert, because not that I have to, you know, be careful of my own safety as a woman. I have to also, you know, program for random unwanted comment about my race or my culture, because I'm very outwardly, Asian, and that's what everyone can spot like immediately when they see me. And some people choose to other me in this way, and I'm not in control of any of that. So yeah.
I feel even just taking the tube at night in London, if I see a group of men entering the carriage and I'm alone in it, I will go out of my way to enter a different carriage.
If they wear like football jerseys.
If they're wearing footy jerseys, but also there's the threat of, oh God, unwanted sexual comments. But then with us, it's like the added element of unwanted racial comments as well. Yeah. And that's a whole other, the double layering is exhausting to navigate sometimes.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this just reminded me, there was, in the beginning of the year, I went to Argentina for my honeymoon with my husband. And there was like an afternoon that I was like, oh, I'm just going to explore this area on my own. And it was like the Mayfair of Buenos Aires. And I went into a luxury hotel, and the security was actually really rude to me. And there were like other tourists just sitting around taking pictures. And he was like, excuse me, like, what are you doing here? Like, this is guest only, like, you have to leave. Like, why are you connected to the Wi-Fi here and stuff like that? And I just feel like it's such a bummer, because I'm on my honeymoon and I was not expected to have an experience like this. But just because I'm alone, like, there's always like a possibility that something like this will happen. And, bet your bottom dollar that if there is like a white man next to me, like this would not happen to me. And it's terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
We remember you sharing that story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
At your housewarming here.
Here.
Scene of the crime. And you said it was just disappointing because it was your one solo interaction without your white husband next to you. And so is it coincidence or is it not? Leaning towards the latter.
You always wonder.
Gaslit about it. Yeah. But if you're the only non-white person in that space receiving hostility, then it points to one thing.
Right.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
So sorry you went through that.
Yeah. Sorry, Hans.
Well, I'll never stay there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are challenges being like a solo Asian female traveler. What do you love the most about being like a travel journalist?
This is like a really important career and a passion of mine, because I don't feel like I'll be able to have a lot of the experience that I have otherwise if I'm not doing this. Because, I've been really lucky. Like, I've been able to stay at many amazing hotels around the world and travel to really far-flung places. I've been to the Maldives. I've been to like Jerusalem, which a lot of people really like, because of their religion, they really dream of visiting that one day. But I had the opportunity to just go there for work. And, I know that like this is such a privilege, and I just don't have the net worth to do this otherwise. And so it's really important to me that like I am able to kind of stay in this line of business, and it affords me so many opportunities to do things that I wouldn't have experienced otherwise. And, seeing different parts of the world is always really exciting. And I get such a dose of energy when I'm in a new city, when I'm in like a different part of the world, and I'm just like experiencing other people's way of life and, eating out in different places. And I just love meeting people. Like I'm visiting Austin, Texas with my husband in October, and we're going to be staying with a lady that I met on the streets in Seoul.
Love.
This is very you.
Yeah, it's very me. Yeah, I keep telling you, like, whenever I tell people, they're like, that would only happen to you. I just met this lovely lady. She's like an American mom. She helped me, like, I was traveling alone in Seoul, and I needed someone to take a picture of me, and I saw her, so I flagged her down, and we started chatting, and we went for lunch in Seoul and hung out for like the whole day. And she was like, I have a house in Austin. You should come stay with us. And I love meeting people like that, just through travel.
So With that said, where do you feel like you belong most? And where feels most like home to you?
I mean, I love Macau, my birthplace. It's funny that like I get, you know, my childhood self is the most satisfied there when I'm in China. And when I see my childhood friends, when I'm with my grandma, I can visit like a lot of places that I love growing up. But then like my career self is the most happy when I'm in London or in New York. I think New York is maybe a little bit hectic for me now. I'm in my 30s, but I love visiting. I love, you know, being part of the scene. You know, as a writer, like I get exposure to so much brands and events happening when I'm in London. And that really fills my cup. And I love meeting like new creatives, like people that, you know, are also doing something really cool. But I need like a recharge every now and then. Like I need to spend time in East Asia. I need to spend time with my family in Macau, and being able to tip the balance for both is like my ideal situation. Yeah, I would love to spend winter and spring in Asia and then spend the summer here. That would be my ideal situation.
Would be
Yeah. So I would say like a bit of both. And I'm comfortable knowing that like there isn't just like one specific place that I feel like home. Like I feel like I'm at home for a different version of myself, depending on where I am. Yeah.
Because we contain multitudes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for speaking
Thanks
with
for
us,
having me.
for sharing so openly, vulnerably, and like candidly. And we think that you and Jojo are just
Queen
like
Jo.
Shout out.
have such generosity of spirit,
Oh,
such
you.
giving
Love
people. You're always giving. You're just so generous and warm to us as a friend and like professionally
you
as
too.
well.
Yeah.
So to close out,
We ask our guests like the same question, which is, if you were to write a letter to the diaspora, what would you say?
So I would say that I see, you know, the ways I'm different and my culture as my superpower. That really, you know, knowing how to speak Mandarin and Cantonese, knowing what's going on like in the news in China has helped me so much as a writer in my career. I'm able to write for really established publications because they really need someone who has like a native speaker perspective of something that is happening like in China, for example. So, you know, especially if they grow up as a minority, they could easily feel ashamed that like, oh, their family is so different, or they grew up in a different way of life and cultural upbringing. But as I get older, I've realized that that's actually my superpower. And I bet loads of people wish they speak Chinese.
Per. In your letter to diaspora, you would say your culture is your superpower.
Yeah.
And that I think is beautiful. Where can the good people find you, V?
Yeah, so I am on TikTok and Instagram. My handle is at venus.onthego. So I'm always on the go. To go matcha. And I also write for Refinery 29. So if you Google like Venus Wong Refinery 29, you'll find my articles. I write a lot about Asian beauty, you know, identity, kind of self, you know, my Asian identity, and essays and kind of like beauty standards and all that stuff. So you can check that out.
well, thank you so much, Venus, for being on Eastern Hunnies. And we will catch you in the next episode.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode of Eastern Hunnies, we want to hear from you. Find us at Eastern Hunnies across the internet, socials, and wherever you stream your podcasts.
Rate, review, subscribe, and spread those good vibes. Thank you, Gabby Lauren, for production, and Muriel Gonzalez, aka Muri, for providing our music. Maraming salamat!